The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with conversation as delegates from hundreds of worlds gathered for the most important meeting in centuries. Representatives wore their finest robes, their polished armor gleaming under the crystal lights that hung from the massive dome ceiling. The air smelled of expensive perfumes and the metallic tang of advanced technology. At the center of it all sat the High Council, 12 beings from the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. Their table was made from a single piece of crystallized starlight, worth more than entire planets. Each council member wore armor that cost fortunes to create, embedded with rare gems and powered by microfusion cores. Ambassador Zethkri of the Vorthan Empire adjusted his golden chestplate, the surface covered in tiny diamonds that sparkled like captured stars. His people had conquered 47 worlds in the last decade alone. Next to him sat Commander Yulandra from the Steel Legion, her silver armor humming with energy shields that could stop a plasma cannon blast. "I hear the humans are finally sending someone," Zethkri said with a laugh that sounded like grinding metal. "Probably another one of their politicians in a cheap suit, begging us not to take their remaining colonies." The other delegates around them chuckled. Humans were known throughout the galaxy as a weak species. They had no natural armor like the rock-skinned Gorlans. They couldn't breathe poison gas like the Nexari. They weren't even particularly smart compared to the crystal-minded ethereals. Worst of all, their technology was hundreds of years behind everyone else. "Remember the last human ambassador?" Commander Yulandra said, her voice carrying through her helmet speakers. "He actually tried to negotiate with the Draconian Horde. As if talking could stop those monsters." More laughter rippled through the nearby seats. Everyone remembered that disaster. The Draconians had been sweeping through human space like a plague, destroying everything in their path. The human ambassador had stood before this very council, pleading for help, offering trade deals and mining rights. The council had voted to let the humans handle their own problems. That was 6 months ago. Since then, 12 human colonies had gone silent. Billions of people were dead or missing. Most of the galaxy assumed humanity would be extinct within the year. "I wonder what excuse they'll have this time," said Lord Kexmore of the Shadow Syndicate, his black armor seeming to absorb the light around him. "Perhaps they'll offer us their entire solar system for a few old battle cruisers." The massive doors at the far end of the hall began to open with a sound like thunder. Every conversation stopped as all eyes turned toward the entrance. The doors were 50 feet tall and made from compressed neutron matter, designed to impress visitors with the council's power. Through those doors walked a figure that made several delegates gasp in shock. It was clearly human, but unlike any human they had ever seen. The being was tall, easily 7 feet in height. But that wasn't what caught their attention. It was the armor. The human wore what could only be called battle armor, but it looked like it had been through a war that lasted centuries. The metal was scratched and dented in 1,000 places. Scorch marks covered the chest piece where energy weapons had struck. One shoulder guard was missing entirely, showing the torn fabric underneath. The helmet was cracked down one side, and the visor flickered between clear and opaque as damaged circuits struggled to function. "By the void," whispered Ambassador Talani from the Crystal Cities. "What is that thing wearing?" The armor looked like it had been cobbled together from a dozen different sources. The left arm was clearly Vorthan design, but it was painted over with human symbols. The right leg appeared to be Nexari technology, modified with crude welding marks where human engineers had forced it to work with the rest of the suit. Cables and wires hung loose from several joints, sparking occasionally as the human walked. Delegates began to whisper and point. Some covered their mouths to hide their laughter. Others shook their heads in what looked like pity or disgust. "Is that supposed to be our human representative?" Zethkri asked loudly enough for half the hall to hear. "It looks like a scavenger who raided a junkyard." The human continued walking toward the center of the hall, seemingly unaware of the stares and comments. Each step made small clanking sounds as loose pieces of armor shifted. A thin trail of steam followed behind from what appeared to be a damaged cooling system. "Look at those weapon mounts," Commander Yulandra said, pointing at the human's back. "Empty. Completely empty." What kind of warrior comes to the Galactic Council without any weapons? The kind that knows they're beaten, Lord Kexmore replied. Probably here to surrender what's left of their species. More delegates joined in the commentary. Someone from the insectoid swarms made clicking sounds that translated as mechanical laughter. A representative from the gas giant collectives released a cloud of blue vapor that their species used to show amusement. The human reached the speaking platform in the center of the hall and stood there silently. Up close, the damage to the armor was even more obvious. There were blast holes patched with what looked like kitchen metal. One of the arm servos made a grinding noise every few seconds. The chest display flickered between different languages, none of them showing anything useful. High Counselor Moth-Tak, a being whose species had never lost a war in 3,000 years, activated the chamber's speaking protocols. His voice boomed through the hall with the authority of someone who commanded fleets that could crack planets. State your name and purpose, human. The figure stood silent for a long moment. When it finally spoke, the voice came through damaged speakers that made everything sound hollow and distant. Commander Marcus Chen, representing the United Earth Defense Force. I'm here to discuss the draconian threat. A wave of laughter swept through the hall. Several delegates didn't even try to hide their amusement. The United Earth Defense Force? Zeth Kree called out. Is that what you're calling your surrender committee now? Even some of the High Council members showed signs of amusement. Counselor Vex Thera's crystal body flickered with colors that meant she found the situation entertaining. Commander Chen remained perfectly still, saying nothing in response to the mockery. High Counselor Moth-Tak raised one massive hand for silence. Commander Chen, if that is indeed your rank, the Council is aware of humanity's situation. We understand that your species is facing extinction. If you wish to formally request refugee status for your surviving populations, we can discuss relocation to designated zones. That's not why I'm here, Chen said simply. Then perhaps you're here to offer Earth's unconditional surrender to prevent further bloodshed? Asked Counselor Zilneth, whose people specialized in cleaning up after wars. We have standard forms for species capitulation. No. The simple response seemed to surprise several council members. Humans were supposed to be desperate, broken, ready to accept any terms that would save some portion of their species. Then what do you want? High Counselor Moth-Tak asked, his tone becoming slightly less patient. Commander Chen took one step forward. The damaged armor made its usual collection of sounds. But somehow, they seemed different now. More deliberate. I'm here to tell you that the draconian threat has been eliminated. The hall fell completely silent. For several seconds, no one moved or spoke. Then, the laughter started again. Louder this time. Eliminated? Zeth Kree stood up from his seat. Human. 6 months ago you people were begging us for help against a single draconian scouting force. Now you claim to have defeated their entire war machine? The draconians sent more than scouts, Chen replied. They sent everything. Commander Yul Andra activated her armor's threat detection systems, just in case the human had suffered some kind of mental breakdown. Human. Our deep space monitors show draconian fleets, still moving through the outer rim. They're preparing to invade the Nexari home system next month. No, Chen said. They're not. The confidence in his voice was starting to disturb some of the delegates. This wasn't how defeated species were supposed to behave. Humans should be desperate, pleading, offering anything for protection. They shouldn't be making impossible claims with perfect certainty. High Counselor Moth-Tak leaned forward in his throne. Commander Chen, the Galactic Council has the most advanced sensor networks in known space. Our intelligence services track every major fleet movement. The Draconian Horde numbers in the millions of ships. No single species has ever defeated them in direct combat. That's because no single species ever had what it took, Chen replied. Lord Kexmore stood up, his shadow armor rippling with barely contained energy. What it took? Human. Your species still uses chemical rockets for basic transportation. Your best warships barely qualify as patrol boats by our standards. What could you possibly have that we lack? Commander Chen didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached up toward his helmet with both hands. The damaged servos whined in protest, as he grasped the sides of the cracked headpiece. "You want to know what we had?" he asked. Several delegates leaned forward in anticipation. Finally, the human was going to explain whatever delusion had convinced him that his species could accomplish the impossible. Chen's hands found the helmet's release mechanisms. We had nothing left to lose. The helmet came off with a soft hiss of escaping air, and Commander Marcus Chen set it down on the platform beside him. What the delegates saw made several of them step backward in shock. Chen's face was a map of war. A thick scar ran from his left temple down to his jaw, the kind that came from energy weapons at close range. His right eye was gone, replaced by a crude cybernetic implant that glowed with a dim red light. Burns covered the left side of his neck, and his hair was white despite the fact that he appeared to be only in his 30s. But it wasn't the injuries that made the delegates uncomfortable. It was his expression. Commander Chen looked at them with the calm certainty of someone who had seen the worst the universe could offer and walked through it anyway. There was no fear in his remaining eye, no desperation, no pleading, just a quiet confidence that seemed completely out of place given everything the Council knew about humanity's situation. 6 months ago, Chen began, his natural voice carrying clearly through the hall. The Draconian Horde sent their advance forces to test human defenses. 12 ships attacked our outer colonies. We lost 3 billion people in the first week. Some delegates nodded. This matched their intelligence reports. Your council voted to let us handle our own problems. You said humanity needed to prove itself worthy of galactic protection. Chen's cybernetic eye focused on High Counselor Mothtalk. So we did. Ambassador Zethkree laughed nervously. Human. You lost 12 colonies. Billions dead. How is that proving anything except your weakness? Because, Chen said, turning that unsettling gaze toward the Vorthan delegate, losing everything taught us something that none of you have ever learned. He reached down and began disconnecting cables from his armpiece. Each cable that came free sparked briefly before going dark. You've spent so long being powerful that you've forgotten what desperation can accomplish. You fight wars with rules, with honor codes, with concern for your reputation among other species. You worry about trade agreements and diplomatic consequences. More cables came free. The left arm of his armor was becoming obviously loose. We didn't have that luxury. The Draconians weren't interested in our surrender. They don't take prisoners or negotiate treaties. They devour everything in their path and leave nothing but empty space behind. Chen began working on the connections for his right leg armor. So we stopped fighting like a civilized species and started fighting like cornered animals. Commander Yul Andra activated her communication implants, sending a priority message to the Council's intelligence division. Something about this human's confidence was deeply wrong. If he was delusional, fine, but if he was telling the truth. The first thing we did, Chen continued, was throw out every rule of civilized warfare. When the main Draconian fleet arrived expecting to find a broken species ready for harvest, they found something else entirely. The leg armor came free with a grinding sound of torn metal. Chen let it drop to the platform. We had converted every civilian ship into a bomb. Freighters, passenger vessels, even escape pods, all of them filled with antimatter, and set to detonate the moment Draconian ships came within scanning range. Several delegates exchanged worried glances. Using civilian vessels as weapons violated about 20 different galactic treaties. They adapted to that quickly enough, so we adapted too. We started using their own technology against them. Chen gestured to his damaged armor. Every piece of this came from Draconian ships. When they destroyed our worlds, we sent salvage teams into the radiation zones to strip parts from the wreckage. We didn't care about compatibility or safety protocols. We just bolted it together and made it work. The right arm piece was coming off now, revealing that Chen's natural arm underneath was covered in surgical scars, where they had connected alien technology directly to his nervous system. The Draconians pride themselves on their hive mind coordination. Every ship knows instantly what every other ship is doing. It makes them incredibly efficient in large battles. Chen's cybernetic eye flickered, so we made sure they were never fighting large battles. Lord Kexmore was beginning to look genuinely concerned. What do you mean? We stopped defending anything. No bases, no colonies, no supply lines. Nothing for them to attack in organized formation. Instead, we sent single ships on suicide runs into their formations. One human vessel would charge straight into 1,000 draconian ships and detonate everything it carried. Chen dropped the arm piece. It hit the platform with a crash that echoed through the silent hall. Do you know what happens to a hive mind when you feed it contradictory information faster than it can process? When every ship in a fleet is suddenly receiving damage reports and tactical updates from a dozen different angles simultaneously? No one answered. They freeze. For just a few seconds, the entire network locks up while it tries to make sense of the chaos. And a few seconds is all you need when you're close enough to touch them. The chest piece was next. Chen's fingers found the release points with practiced ease. We lost 1,000 ships for every one of theirs we destroyed. Maybe 10,000. We stopped counting after the first month. Commander Yolandra's intelligence contacts were sending back disturbing reports. Deep space monitoring stations had indeed registered massive energy signatures from human space, but they had assumed it was just the Draconians destroying human infrastructure. The Draconians brought 12 million ships to destroy humanity, Chen said. The chest armor came free, revealing a torso covered in surgical scars and cybernetic implants. They weren't expecting to fight 2 billion human volunteers who had already accepted that they were going to die. High Counselor Mothtalk finally spoke, his voice carefully controlled. Commander, you're describing tactics that would have resulted in the complete extinction of your species. Yes, Chen agreed. We knew that from the beginning. Every human who volunteered for the defense fleets knew they would never see home again. Every ship that launched knew it was a one-way trip. Every colony that stayed to fight instead of evacuating knew they were choosing death. He let the chest piece fall. But here's what the Draconians didn't understand about humans, and what none of you understand either. When we're going to die anyway, we become very creative about taking our enemies with us. The platform was now littered with pieces of alien armor. Chen stood in simple military fatigues, covered in scars and cybernetic modifications, but somehow more imposing than he had been in full battle gear. It took 4 months to destroy their main fleet. Another month to hunt down the survivors. The final Draconian ship was eliminated 3 weeks ago, when one of our volunteers rammed it with a mining vessel loaded with stellar plasma. Ambassador Telani's crystal body was flickering rapidly with confusion. Commander, our sensors show no human fleet movements. No large-scale military operations. How could you have engaged the Draconians without anyone detecting it? Chen smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Because we weren't using fleets. Every attack was carried out by individual ships, or small groups at most. Farmers and crop haulers, teachers and passenger shuttles, children who lied about their age to get aboard cargo vessels. All of them carrying whatever weapons they could build or steal or rip out of destroyed Draconian ships. He gestured to the pile of armor at his feet. This suit? I took it piece by piece from Draconian boarding parties that tried to capture my ship. The left arm came from their commander after I strangled him with a severed power cable. The right leg came from their engineer after I beat him to death with a wrench. The hall was now completely silent except for the occasional electronic beep from someone's equipment. The Draconians were used to fighting civilized species. Enemies who followed rules, who tried to minimize casualties, who valued the lives of their soldiers. They had no idea how to respond to an entire civilization that treated every single citizen as an expendable weapon. Chen reached down and began removing his boots. Do you want to know the moment they realized they had lost? It was when one of their hive queens tried to negotiate our surrender. She offered to spare 10% of humanity if we would stop fighting. What did you tell her? Lord Kexmore asked quietly. I told her we would keep killing Draconians until every last one of us was dead. And then our automated systems would keep killing them after that. We had nothing left to negotiate with because we had already given up everything that mattered. The boots came off, revealing feet that were more cybernetic than organic. She didn't believe me, so I showed her the Titan protocol. Several council members looked confused. Councillor Vexisthara spoke first. What is the Titan protocol? Chen straightened up, now standing in just his military fatigues but somehow looking more dangerous than any armored warrior in the hall. Every human world had fusion reactors. Most had several. When it became clear that a colony was going to fall, the survivors would rig all the reactors to overload simultaneously. His cybernetic eye glowed brighter. A coordinated fusion detonation can sterilize everything within several light minutes of the blast point. The implications hit several delegates at once. Ambassador Zethkri's golden armor began to dim as power diverted to his defensive systems. You turned your own worlds into weapons? 17 colonies activated Titan Protocol rather than let the Draconians harvest them. Billions of tons of matter converted directly to energy. Some of those explosions are still visible from neighboring star systems. Chen looked around the hall, making eye contact with as many delegates as possible. That's when the Hive Queen started to understand what she was fighting, not a species trying to survive. But a species that had already decided survival was less important than making sure our enemies didn't survive either. Commander Yolanda was receiving constant updates from intelligence now. Long-range sensors were detecting massive radiation signatures from what had been Draconian space, energy patterns consistent with antimatter explosions, fusion detonations, and something else they couldn't identify. The final battle lasted 3 days. Chen continued. Every remaining human ship converged on the Draconian home fleet. We didn't try to outmaneuver them or use clever tactics. We just flew straight at them and started shooting. His voice became quieter, but somehow more intense. When our weapons ran out, we rammed them. When our ships were destroyed, we used escape pods as guided missiles. When we ran out of escape pods, we put on environmental suits and used personal thrusters to board their vessels. The silence in the hall was becoming oppressive. The Draconians fought well. They were brave and disciplined and tactically superior in every way, but they were trying to win a war, and we were just trying to kill as many of them as possible before we died. Chen smiled again, and this time it was genuinely terrifying. Turns out, when that's your only objective, you can accomplish remarkable things. High Counselor Mothtalk was the first to break the silence. His voice carried a tremor that hadn't been there before. Commander Chen, you're describing the complete destruction of your civilization. Even if what you claim is true, humanity cannot have survived such tactics. Chen nodded slowly. You're absolutely right. The humanity you knew is gone. 12 billion people lived in human space 6 months ago. Today, there are roughly 47 million of us left. The number hit the assembled delegates like a physical blow. Several gasped audibly. In galactic terms, 47 million barely qualified as a viable population. Every human world is either destroyed or uninhabitable. Our entire fleet is gone. Our industrial base is scattered radiation. Most of our cultural history was lost when Earth's archives were converted into antimatter bombs. Chen's cybernetic eye dimmed slightly. We sacrificed everything to stop the Draconians. Ambassador Zethkri found his voice first. Then you've proven our point. Humanity destroyed itself, fighting an enemy that would have eventually been stopped by the combined galactic fleets. You gained nothing. Chen turned to look at the Vorthan delegate, and something in his expression made Zethkri take an involuntary step backward. Is that what you think? That the combined galactic fleets would have stopped them? Chen's voice was soft, but it carried perfectly through the silent hall. Tell me, Ambassador, how many fleets has your empire lost to the Draconians? None, of course. We've never directly engaged them in battle. And you, Commander Yolanda? How many Steel Legion vessels have been destroyed fighting the Draconian threat? Commander Yolandra's helmet speakers crackled slightly. The Steel Legion has chosen to avoid direct confrontation until a coordinated response could be organized. Chen looked around the hall, his gaze stopping on each major delegation. Lord Kexmore? Counselor Vexthara? Any of you? Have any of your mighty civilizations actually fought the Draconians? Well, the silence stretched uncomfortably long. That's what I thought, Chen said. You've all been waiting for someone else to solve the problem, hoping the Draconians would exhaust themselves conquering other species, or that some technological solution would present itself. He walked closer to the council platform, moving with the careful precision of someone whose body was more machine than flesh. Do you want to know what our intelligence division discovered during the war? The real reason why none of you ever fought the Draconians directly? High Counselor Mothtak's massive frame shifted uncomfortably. Commander, the Council has always maintained that a coordinated response was preferable to— You were afraid, Chen interrupted. All of you. The most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. And you were terrified of a species that you could have destroyed centuries ago if you had worked together. Angry murmurs began to rise from the delegate seating, but Chen continued without pause. The Draconians were never as strong as you believed. Yes, they had numbers and coordination, but their technology was inferior to yours. Their tactics were predictable. Their hive mind structure made them vulnerable to psychological warfare. Chen's cybernetic implants began to glow brighter. The only advantage they had was that they were willing to accept massive casualties to achieve their objectives, and none of you were willing to match that commitment. Commander Yulandra stood up, her armor systems humming with increasing energy. Human, you're suggesting that the Council deliberately allowed species to be destroyed rather than risk our own forces. That's true, Chen said simply. That's exactly what I'm suggesting. Because that's exactly what happened. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device that looked like it had been built from spare parts. During the war, we captured several Draconian command vessels. Their archives contained detailed intelligence about every major galactic civilization. The device projected a holographic display above the platform. Star charts appeared, showing fleet positions and military capabilities for dozens of species. According to Draconian intelligence, the Vorthan Empire alone has enough firepower to have stopped their advance 3 years ago. The Steel Legion could have eliminated their entire fleet structure with a single coordinated strike. The Shadow Syndicate has stealth technology that would have made Draconian coordination impossible. The holograms showed tactical analyses that were disturbingly accurate. Several delegates recognized classified information about their own military capabilities, but none of you were willing to risk your precious fleets on a problem that might eventually be solved by someone else's sacrifice, so you let them consume the Outer Rim species while you waited for a convenient solution. Ambassador Tel Ani's crystal body was flickering rapidly through different colors. Commander, you don't understand the complexities of galactic politics. Military action requires careful consideration of politics? Chen laughed, and it was not a pleasant sound. The Draconians had detailed plans for every species in this hall. Would you like to see the timetable for your destruction? The hologram shifted, showing invasion routes and target priorities. The crystal cities were scheduled for consumption in 18 months. The Shadow Syndicate, territories in 2 years. Even the mighty Vorthan Empire was marked for eventual destruction. They weren't going to stop with the Outer Rim species. They were working their way up to you, all of you. And your grand plan was to keep sacrificing smaller civilizations until you could figure out a solution that didn't require you to risk anything. High Counselor Mothtak stood up slowly, his massive form casting shadows across the platform. Commander Chen, even if your accusations are accurate, it changes nothing. Humanity is effectively extinct. The Draconian threat is ended, yes, but at a cost that makes victory meaningless. Chen smiled again, and this time there was something genuinely happy in his expression. Is that what you think? That we're extinct? He activated another function on his device. New holograms appeared, showing star charts with human settlements marked in blue. 47 million humans survived the war. But we didn't just survive randomly. We survived strategically. The display zoomed in on specific systems. Every human who lived through the Draconian War did so because they were useful for what comes next. Engineers who can build weapons from scrap, soldiers who can function without support infrastructure, pilots who can fly anything with engines, scientists who can create new technologies under impossible conditions. Chen gestured to his own cybernetic modifications. We're not the same species that begged for your help 6 months ago. We're what humanity becomes when survival requires evolution. The star charts showed movement patterns, supply lines, and what appeared to be construction projects scattered throughout human space. The old humanity was weak because we tried to follow your rules. We built civilizations that required peace to function. We created societies that valued individual lives over species survival. We developed technologies that prioritized comfort over effectiveness. His cybernetic eye focused on the High Council. The new humanity has different priorities. Commander Yulandra's threat detection systems were now screaming warnings that she couldn't understand. The human should register as a minimal threat, but her equipment was reacting as if he were a capital warship. Every surviving human has cybernetic modifications taken from draconian technology. We can interface directly with captured alien equipment. We can survive in environments that would kill unmodified humans. We can process information at rates that approach artificial intelligence levels. Chen tapped his temple where the cybernetic implant was located. Most importantly, we can coordinate as efficiently as any hive mind when necessary, but maintain individual creativity and adaptation when the situation requires it. The implications were starting to dawn on some of the more intelligent delegates. Lord Kexmore spoke carefully. Commander, are you suggesting that humanity somehow benefited from the war? I'm not suggesting it. I'm stating it directly. The war killed weak humanity and forged something stronger. Chen's remaining natural eye gleamed with an intensity that made several delegates uncomfortable. Something that learned very important lessons about galactic politics. New holograms appeared, showing detailed intelligence files on every species in the hall. We know your fleet compositions. We know your defensive strategies. We know your supply lines, your industrial capabilities, your political structures, and your military weaknesses. The Draconians were very thorough in their intelligence gathering. High Counselor Mothtak's voice carried a warning tone. Commander, the Council will not tolerate threats. This isn't a threat, Chen replied calmly. This is an explanation. You see, we learned something else during the war. Something about the nature of power in this galaxy. He gestured toward the assembled delegates. All of you are sitting here, in your expensive armor, representing civilizations with billions of citizens and thousands of worlds. You have fleets that can crack planets and technologies that seem like magic to lesser species. The holographic display shifted to show economic data, trade relationships, and resource dependencies. But none of you are actually strong. You're wealthy. You're technologically advanced. You have impressive military capabilities. But you're not strong, because you've never had to sacrifice everything for survival. Chen began walking among the delegate seating, his cybernetic parts making small mechanical sounds with each step. Strength isn't about having the biggest fleet or the most advanced weapons. Strength is about being willing to lose everything in order to win. Several delegates moved away from him as he passed, though they couldn't articulate why they felt threatened. The new humanity understands this in a way that none of your species ever will. We've already lost everything once. We've already accepted that our survival might require sacrifices that civilized species consider unthinkable. Chen stopped in front of Ambassador Zethkree. Tell me, Ambassador, what would the Vorthan Empire sacrifice to prevent its destruction? Would you give up half your worlds? 3/4? Would you accept the death of 90% of your population if it meant the survivors would be strong enough to never face that choice again? Zethkree's golden armor was now running at maximum defensive power, but he found himself unable to speak. That's what I thought, Chen said. You'd negotiate. You'd look for alternatives. You'd try to find a solution that didn't cost you anything important. And while you were negotiating, stronger enemies would destroy you. He turned back toward the council platform. The new humanity doesn't have that weakness anymore. We've already lost everything we were afraid to lose. There's nothing left for us to protect except our commitment to ensuring that what happened to us never happens to anyone else. High Counselor Mothtak finally found his voice. Commander, what exactly are you proposing? Chen smiled one final time, and this expression was different from all the others. It was the smile of someone who held all the cards and was about to play them. I'm not proposing anything, Counselor. I'm informing you of a decision that's already been made. As of today, the human survivors are taking responsibility for galactic security. The hall erupted in shocked voices, angry shouts, and the sound of weapons systems powering up. Chen stood calmly in the center of it all and continued speaking, his voice somehow carrying over the chaos. Any species that threatens civilian populations will be eliminated. Any civilization that allows such threats to develop while they could have stopped them will be forcibly reorganized. Any government that prioritizes its own comfort over galactic stability will be replaced. Commander Yulandra's armor was now broadcasting emergency signals. Human. You're describing a military coup against the entire galactic order. Yes, Chen agreed. That's exactly what I'm describing. The old order failed. It allowed the draconian crisis to develop because none of you were willing to take responsibility for solving problems that didn't directly threaten you. His cybernetic implants were now glowing bright enough to be seen clearly throughout the hall. The new humanity won't make that mistake. We'll handle threats before they become crises, regardless of whether other species approve of our methods. High Counselor Mothtalk stood to his full imposing height. The Council commands fleets, with millions of ships. Our combined military might could destroy your entire surviving population in a matter of days. Chen nodded agreeably. Probably true. But here's what you're forgetting, Counselor. You still think survival is the most important thing. You still believe that losing your ships and soldiers and worlds would be a failure. He looked directly at each council member in turn. We know better now. If you destroy us, every human ship will detonate its core systems inside your formation. Every human world will activate fusion protocols that will sterilize entire star systems. Every human citizen will make sure that killing us costs you more than you can afford to pay. The mechanical sounds from his cybernetic parts were becoming more pronounced, almost like a countdown timer. And while you're rebuilding from those losses, remember that we've hidden detailed intelligence about all of your civilizations throughout the galaxy. Other species will learn about your weaknesses, your secret technologies, your political vulnerabilities. Some of them might decide that a weakened galactic council represents an opportunity. The chaos in the hall was beginning to quiet as delegates realized the full implications of what Chen was saying. Of course, Chen continued conversationally. There is an alternative. You could choose to work with us instead of against us. We could use your resources and our determination to build a galactic civilization that's actually strong enough to protect itself. He gestured toward the pile of abandoned armor pieces. The choice is yours. Honored delegates. You can keep playing politics while stronger enemies gather in the dark spaces between stars, or you can learn what humanity learned when we had our backs against the wall. Chen's cybernetic eye dimmed back to its normal glow. But understand this. The age of civilizations that value comfort over survival is over. What comes next will be built by species that understand the price of peace. He turned and began walking toward the great doors. The Council has one standard galactic week to decide whether you want to be part of that future or an obstacle to it. As he reached the exit, Chen paused and looked back one final time. Oh, and counselors, you might want to check your long-range sensors again. I think you'll find that some of your assumptions about human fleet strength were incomplete. The doors closed behind him with a sound like thunder, leaving the most powerful beings in the galaxy sitting in absolute silence, finally understanding that the balance of power had shifted in ways they were only beginning to comprehend.